Don't know what to do with these now. Oh, okay. Welcome to the channel, friends. Today I'm going to do a mid-year wrap-up. It's July 1st now, which means we're 6 months into the year and we have 6 months left of the year. And so I just want to tell you everything that I've read so far. I also would love to do one of the mid-year freakout tags, but I think that would be pretty redundant because I would just be talking about the exact same books again. So instead of doing that, I'm going to kind of do a couple of the questions at the end, and I'm also going to give some of these books some superlatives. So like best book, book that made me cry, best cover, a few of those, and I'll talk about them as we go through it. Starting off with some stats, I'm going to put them up here probably. I read 25 books total. My goal for the whole year is 50 books, so I'm halfway there, which is perfect. We are on track. I have read 10,441 pages, and then of those books that I read, there are a lot of genres, but I'm going to break it down into 4. So literary fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and then mystery, thriller, horror. So I read 8 literary fiction, 10 fantasy sci-fi, 4 romance, and then 3 mystery thriller / horror, all of the above. My average rating was a 3.48, which could be better. It could be better. I think my overall rating was like pretty good, but I read a couple that really dragged it down, so that's what that is. Hopefully we can have a better second half of the year and get that up. But yeah, I'm just gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna, I think, go in chronological order, starting off with the beginning of the year. First book I started with this year was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I was so excited for this book. I had heard a lot of good things about it. I had this book to start, and then when I heard that the new covers were coming out, I went on eBay and bought the rest of the series so that I would have a whole matching set of them. And unfortunately, this was just okay. The back of the book says, Leia is a slave, Elias is a soldier, neither is free. And I feel like that is a good summation of what this book is about. Like I said, it's a fantasy. There are some trials in here. There are some fantastical evils that are included. It just was a little bit too YA for me and a little bit unmemorable. There definitely were some aspects that I like, but it just overall wasn't a standout fantasy to me. I'm probably gonna continue the series. I think I've heard that it gets better, but I gave this one a 3-star. Like I said, just okay. Next, I reread Magnolia Parks. I read this for the first time, I think a year or 2 ago, but I wanted to get back into it and get into Daisy Hates, so I reread Magnolia Parks so I could remember what happened. And I really like this book. I rated it a 3.75. This is a very toxic love story. A lot of people relate it to Gossip Girl, and that is definitely the mindset you have to go in to the book with to enjoy it, I think, because this is not a couple that you would root for probably in real life, but because it's fictional, because you know you're going into it with this toxic mindset, I rooted for them anyways. But overall, just like rich people tea. The next book I picked up was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This is about a family in 1974 who moves to Alaska. This is the time of the Great Frontier, and they truly have to figure out how to survive in these extreme climates and with this extreme environment. This story has a lot of domestic violence in it and gives what I think would be a realistic depiction of a family, a daughter and a wife who are going through this with somebody that they do love, and how people can be just as unpredictable and violent as this climate and this environment that they're in. This has a really beautiful and sad love story in it, and this is definitely getting a superlative for making me cry. I sobbed like a baby at this. I gave this 4.25 stars originally, but I think I'm gonna up it to a 4.5 because as I talk about this and think back on it, this story really stuck with me, and I thought about it for a long time after I read it. Next one was a reread. This is The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. This is the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson series, and I was trying to reread this whole series. I kind of wish I hadn't done that because this book was so built up in my head from when I read it in middle school, and I just wanted to feel those feelings again. And unfortunately, this is middle grade and I am now the ripe age of 25, so it just didn't hit like it used to. I can definitely see why I liked it when I was in middle school. And if you're under the age of 16, I do recommend you read this series. If you're over that age and you haven't read this book in a long time, I recommend not rereading it so that it can live up on its pedestal in your head. That's really all I have to say about this. I don't rate rereads that I read when I was in like middle school because it's so biased, and I know that I loved them for a reason back then, so I don't want to dock it now that I am out of the age range for it. So that's that. Next book I read was also for book club, and it is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a classic novel. It's a romantic suspense, as the cover says. This is about a woman who meets a much older man and becomes instantly enthralled with him, and they end up getting married. The narrator, who is actually never named in this story, moves into Maxim's house, which is the man that she marries. This house is beautiful and it's famous in their area for its beauty, and people actually like book tours to go see this house. But the main premise of the book is that Maxim actually used to have a wife who died mysteriously. At least it's mysterious to the narrator. The house is left untouched from how Rebecca, who is Maxim's deceased wife, had left it, and everything is run exactly as Rebecca had run it before. So there's a very eerie undertone while you're reading this of the narrator trying to acclimate to this new life that she has, because like I mentioned, she's much younger than Maxim. She's in this whole new environment, and it's just about her getting accustomed to this life, basically. I read this in the winter, and I feel like it was a very good time period to read this in because of the eerie vibes. I also think this would be a good summer read because if I remember correctly, there's a lot of like garden scenes in this cottage place. They're also on a coast, so this would be a good like suspense to read in the summer as well. I did give this a 3.75. I really liked it, and I liked the writing. I don't know if I rooted for these characters the whole time though. I think that all of them were a little bit unlikable, and not in a good way, because there are some books that I like when people are unlikable. I can tell that it's on purpose, and some of it was purposeful, but beyond that, there was just nothing for me to really grab onto and enjoy with the characters themselves. I would definitely still recommend this one though. Next, as a little palate cleanser, I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. This book was just okay. This is a rom-com about a woman who's a teacher, but she's trying to write a novel and tries to send it to a publisher, accidentally sends it to, I think, another teacher, and so her and her colleague, who is actually her nemesis, have to come together to try to get this back without the teacher seeing it. So it's a little bit rivals to lovers, a little bit forced proximity. It was good, it was cute, wasn't my favorite. This is a standalone series, I guess, if you want to say. And I read When in Rome as well. I think both were okay. Next, for my book club, this was a new book club that I was joining. This was my first meeting that I was going to. We read Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. This was my first very low rating of the year, unfortunately. I honestly don't remember a whole lot from this book, except that I think the target audience were 50 plus who were sad in their life and had commitment issues. I just don't, all of the characters like hated what they were doing in life, didn't like their kids. I was just depressed reading it because they were all sad and sad about their life. I don't recommend. I gave it a 2.5. It was slightly entertaining, but that was it. Fortunately for me, the next two books that I read were much, much better. And those were The Stolen Heir and The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. These are the companion series to The Cruel Prince. The Cruel Prince is my favorite fantasy series that I've read as an adult, and it's, I think, the only one that has really drawn me in like the fantasy series that I read when I was in middle school. Like the feeling that I got, as I was talking about before, from the Percy Jackson series, or one I'll talk about later. I have just been yearning for that feeling in adult fantasy. Something that you can really dive into. Nothing pulls you out of the story. The magic is well explained. And this was that for me. I rated both of these a 4.5, and these follow the brother of the main character and one of the other characters from the Cruel Prince series, so I definitely suggest reading that one first. And I can't really, I guess, explain too much about these without giving anything away. But just know, all of these stories are about fairies, but they follow the like actual lore of fairies. I don't know where those originate from, but it kind of follows the rules of that and is less up to the interpretation of the author, I think. But yeah, these were great. This is a roller coaster because we're back down again for Wicked. And Wicked's gonna get my superlative for biggest shock of the year so far, because I was so shocked at how much I detested this book. I, like the rest of the world, watched Wicked and ate it up. And so I just wanted a little bit more of that in my life, and I wanted to see where it came from. I'm glad that I got that information, but also like at what cost. This book was so long and so strange in the worst ways. It had a lot of political and religious elements that I didn't really expect. Obviously, there are some political aspects in the musical as well, but they're just not that deep. And usually I like political unrest and all that, but it just didn't fit in this story. I don't know. I recommend not wasting your time reading it. Okay, that's aggressive. Me personally, I wouldn't read this again or tell you to read it and subject yourself to that. I gave it a 1.5, and all of that was for the adaptation that was inspired by it and not for the writing itself. Back to back, we have books that actually made me mad because Private Rights. This book Kenna actually got me in a swap that we did for Christmas. This book is described mostly as being a commentary on climate change, and it does hint to some like mysterious elements. This could have been a short story and I still would have not liked it, but at least I would have wasted less of my time on it. The like mysterious aspects are quite literally only noted at the very beginning and the very end, and then like the tiniest bit ever sprinkled through the middle, but it was just doing so much and nothing at all at the same time. I don't even know what else to say about this. If you've read this, can somebody like tell me what they thought, because I don't even know. That got a 1 star. Next, we're back up, baby, because I read Sunrise on the Reaping. I went to a midnight release party of this and I read it immediately after, and this is my one and only 5-star of the year. So of course it is also getting the superlative for best book of the year so far. This is following Haymitch during his games, and I can't say anything about this that hasn't already been said, but Suzanne Collins is just a genius. She's able to connect the dots so well, and I am hard pressed to believe that she didn't have a lot of these ideas from the very start, because they just mesh so well together, and I don't know how she does it, but this was so good. I have no notes. I'm so excited for the movie to come out. Next, I finally got to Daisy Hates, and I rated this 4 stars. I really, really liked this book. It has the same like toxic kind of relationships, obviously different ones because it follows a whole different character and the people that she interacts with. But I liked this one a little bit more because it also has the added elements of them being like arms dealers and whatever else they do. I honestly can't remember, but they go against the law quite often. I thought that was the perfect addition to the story, so I loved this. I can't wait to continue reading this series. And I'm listening to this on audio, which I recommend you do. These are really well narrated audiobooks, so if you get the chance, you should listen to them. I then went into Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I was super excited for this one, and it unfortunately let me down. One of my favorite romances from last year was Just for the Summer by her, and so I had kind of high expectations going into this one. This was a little bit too Gen Z for me. There was too many pop culture references in here, like to TikTok, within the first like 10 pages of the book, Rhysand is mentioned like 3 times from A Court of Thorns and Roses. And they're talking about his appearance. They're saying that he looks like Rhysand, who's a fictional character who has never been canonically depicted. And so stuff like that just took me out of the story. It was just okay other than that. As she does with most of her books, she has another like external factor that is affecting her main characters' lives and their disability to be together. But it was just like back to back to back to back to back. Bad things were happening, and so it was just hard to read, honestly. I still gave it 3 stars because it wasn't a bad book, and I know a lot of people do enjoy it, so I would recommend it to some people, just not everybody. Okay, we're moving through these. Next up was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This was for the same book club that I read Tell Me Everything for. This was a much better experience. This is about 2 sisters who are estranged and live very different lives, but when one of their husbands is murdered, they are brought back together, trying to kind of figure out what happened. They also, for many years, have been trying to figure out what happened to their sister who went missing many years ago and is somehow drawn back into the story at this point in their lives. This was a really captivating read. It had me drawn in and on the edge of my seat. And actually, this is one of the few thrillers that I truly was like scared about what might happen next. However, there are very, very graphic descriptions in here that I think were overkill a little bit. I think they were in there for shock value, and the story honestly could have stood on its own without them. So for that reason, it only got a 3.5, but this was a really, really good thriller. And if you can stomach stuff like that, I do recommend. But if you kind of are squeamish, I definitely would stay away from this one. Okay, next, I didn't read these 2 back to back, but I'm gonna talk about them together. That is City of Lost Souls and City of Heavenly Fire. These, like Percy Jackson, I wanted to reread because I loved this series in middle school. Unfortunately, I'm an adult now, and they just don't hit the same. I really wanted to reread them because my favorite series of all time was The Infernal Devices, and this is the precursor to that, so I just wanted to read them so that I could go back into that. It's still a good story, and especially for the time that it came out, it honestly was a little bit ahead of its time in some aspects. The fantasy is incredibly fleshed out. It's about shadow hunters, or Nephilim, who are children of an angel and a human, as well as like fairies, warlocks, vampires, werewolves, the whole shebang in here. And their job is to fight off demons who come into this world. I'm actually just really excited to get into The Infernal Devices, so I finished these, and hopefully The Infernal Devices holds up a little better. Again, I didn't rate these because these are rereads from middle school and I biased. Next up, during the readathon, I read Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a very unnerving read. This is about a woman in college who joins a cult masquerading as a sorority or something like that. It honestly is just a mind-bending book, and I think it was well written for that aspect. I would recommend honestly going in knowing nothing else about it, because I think the whole allure of this book is the mind-bending aspects. So if you know what's going on, then I think it would be less entertaining, but yeah, just an entertaining read, a little bit mind-bendy. Gave this one a 3.5. Also in the readathon, I finished Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This was a really good novel. It is a rom-com, as are her other books, but this one edges a little bit more towards literary fiction and has been correctly compared, I think, to Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Of course, it is its own story though, and I gave it 4 stars. Ballad of Never After, I started and didn't finish during the readathon. This is the second book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I think this book was just trying to do too much. The main character has like a love-hate relationship with the love interest. It's so wishy-washy back and forth, which I get is for like the angst of it all, but it was just too back and forth. It happened too many times. It was too predictable. I didn't even care when she did or didn't like him because I knew it was gonna flip in an instant. These books are super whimsical, but it just didn't hit the same as the first one did or as the Caraval series did. Somebody let me know if the third one is actually better than this, because I've heard a lot of people say that this is their favorite in the series. The ending though, this actually made me mad because the ending made me want to read the third book, and I don't want to read the third book, you know what I mean? But yeah, 2.25 stars. Next book, started during the readathon, didn't finish until literally months after, was Mistborn. This is a really well executed fantasy. It's definitely slow to get through, but it has a really interesting magical premise, and there are a lot of books in this series. So if you're looking to get into a super long series that you can dedicate a lot of time and brain power towards, then I recommend this. I give it a 4.5. I'm excited to get into the next ones, but I'm gonna definitely have to space them out because they take so long to read. 4 more, woo! Okay, next is Definitely Better Now. This is about a woman who has just completed her first year of AA and her first year of being sober, and just her journey in cultivating new relationships with people and finding, after all this time, how to be in social situations and relationships while being sober and the difficulties that come with that. This also, though, had a very big romantic element to it, and I thought both aspects were good, but I think it could have done with less of one or the other. I think this book tried to do a lot in both directions, and if it was just one or the other, I don't know, it would have been a lot more engaging maybe. I think if it was strictly like a romance, it would be comparable to an Abby Jimenez because it does have those deeper themes. This is the author Ava Robinson's debut novel though, I think, so I think this is very promising writing. It just wasn't my favorite. I did rate it 3 stars though, so would still recommend. Next, I listened to Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I have all my thoughts in my first, I think, vlog that I ever posted, but this was a reread. It was good. I rated it 3.5 stars. Last two, I have Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. I rated this 4.5 stars. This definitely gets superlative for making me cry as well. This is a story about 2 best friends, and it follows their life over, I think, about 30 years, and just the ups and downs of life in a female friendship. And I have a lot more of my thoughts in a video that's about to come out, actually. Last but not least is A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman. This is my second Fredrik Backman book. I read Beartown, I think back in like 2019, right when I was really getting back into reading after only reading a few books a year for a few years. And so I had rated that a 3-star back then. I would be interested to reread that and see how I feel about it now, especially now that I am more into literary fiction than I was back then. I used to read primarily fantasy novels. But anyways, A Man Called Uwe was super heartwarming. It was very sad. And I also have more of my thoughts in another video that's gonna come out. Maybe you can guess what that is, but this got a 4-star from me. It was really good. Just a couple freak out tag questions. A new release that you haven't read yet, but you want to, that would be Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I need to read Carrie Soto Is Back first, but I've seen some people weeping at Atmosphere, so I would love to get into that one. I think I would rate it really highly. Favorite author, Kristen Hanna and Holly Black for sure. Both have 2 books in this first half of the year that I gave 4.5 stars. Actually, yeah, all of those books got a 4.5 star from me. Prettiest cover, the original, Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates. Chef's Kiss. I love those so much. The art, I think, is done by one of Jessa Hastings' friends or something like that. And I just think they're really unique and pretty, and when you actually get into the story, they then have a lot of aspects that pull from the story, so I love that. The new covers, questionable at best. Yeah, that's everything I read this year, and a few things that I want to read and thoughts that I have. Overall, it's been a good half year of reading so far. Hopefully we can keep up the momentum in the second half of the year. I have a couple other videos on this channel, so check those out if you want to, and if you don't. If you liked this video, go on ahead. Thanks. Okay, that's all. Ciao. Welcome back to my channel, friends.